Leia Hart's hands trembled as she tightened the final coupling on the Universal Resonance Beacon's power core. She had done this task dozens of times before, but never with stakes this high. Around her, the control chamber of Sanctuary One was a whirlwind of frantic voices, flashing monitors, and the distant rumble of defense systems preparing for the inevitable. The room was lit in the sterile glow of overhead panels, a harsh reminder of the station's utilitarian design. Leia wiped the sweat from her brow, her movements quick but precise. She didn't have the luxury of error. The beacon was humanity's last hope. Outside the reinforced windows, the broken blue curve of Earth hung in the void. Once a cradle of life and progress, the planet was now a scared wasteland, its surface scorched by orbital bombardments and ground wars waged by the Veil Collective. The sight twisted Leia's stomach, but she forced herself to focus. "How long until it's ready?" barked Commander Ethan Voss, his voice cutting through the chaos. Ethan stood at the entrance, his combat armor still dusted with soot from the last skirmish. He carried the weight of humanity's survival on his broad shoulders, his sharp features etched with exhaustion. Leia glanced up briefly, her fingers still working. "Hours, maybe less," she replied. "The calibrations are delicate. One wrong step, and this thing won't even power on." Ethan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his cropped hair. "Hours might be more time than we've got." The station's comm system crackled to life, and a voice filled the air. "Attention, all personnel. Veil Collective Fleet detected on long-range scanners. Estimated arrival, 8 hours." The room froze. Leia's heart dropped, the tension in her chest almost unbearable. 8 hours. Ethan stepped forward, his commanding presence pulling the team back to focus. "We'll hold them off. You just get that beacon working." Leia nodded, though doubt gnawed at her resolve. The beacon wasn't just a distress signal, it was a masterpiece of engineering capable of broadcasting across the galaxy. Its signal could reach civilizations humanity had never encountered, a desperate plea for help. But it also carried a darker implication. If the signal failed, it would expose Earth's location to other potential threats. "Commander," Leia began, her voice low. What if no one answers?" Ethan crouched beside her, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Then at least they'll know we fought. They'll know humanity didn't go quietly." Leia swallowed the lump in her throat, her gaze hardening. "Then I'll make it work." As Ethan left to coordinate defenses, Leia turned back to her task. Around her, the crew of Sanctuary One worked with grim determination, a shared understanding that this was their last stand. The hum of the beacon's core grew louder, its energy building. Leia whispered a silent prayer as her hands moved with newfound purpose. Time was running out, but if humanity was to have any chance, the galaxy had to hear their call. The final beacon had to shine. The Veil Collective's fleet loomed like a storm on the edge of Sanctuary One scanners. Leia watched the data on a nearby monitor, her stomach sinking as the shapes of sleek alien warships appeared. They moved in a precise formation, a symphony of death against the black canvas of space. Each ship bristled with advanced weaponry, their sheer size dwarfing humanity's meager defenses. "Signal from the Veil Collective," Commander called one of the communications officers. Ethan Voss strode into the command center, his boots clanging against the metal deck. "Put it through," he ordered, standing tall even as the crew's eyes darted nervously toward him. A holographic projection flickered to life in the middle of the room, revealing Cal Nissar, the cold-eyed warlord of the Veil Collective. His form was alien yet disturbingly human-like, with sharp features and a predatory smile that sent a chill through the room. "People of Earth," Cale began, his voice smooth yet dripping with menace. "You have fought valiantly, but this struggle is over. Your resistance is futile. Surrender, and we may grant mercy to your survivors. Resist, and we will erase the remnants of your species from existence." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving the room in a heavy silence. Leah felt her chest tighten. There was no negotiation, no room for compromise. It was submission or extinction. Ethan turned to face the gathered crew, his voice unwavering. The Veil wants us to think we're beaten, but they're wrong. We've survived this long because we refuse to kneel. We won't stop now. The crew erupted into murmurs of agreement, though their fear was palpable. Leah kept her focus on the beacon's console, her hands moving instinctively as she worked through another calibration. She envied Ethan's ability to project confidence when all seemed lost. "Commander," Leah called out, her voice cutting through the chatter. "The beacon is almost ready, but it's not just a matter of turning it on. We need to decide what message we're sending." Ethan approached her, his expression serious. "Explain." She hesitated, then said, "We can send a distress call, asking for help from anyone listening. But there's another option. We could broadcast something more defiant, a message to inspire others or to warn them about the Veil." Ethan frowned. "And the catch?" Leah sighed. "The energy required for the beacon to transmit across the galaxy is immense. Once we send the signal, the station will lose power for shields and weapons. We'll be sitting ducks." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What does the council say?" "They're arguing," Leah said with a grimace. "Some want to surrender. Others think we should use the beacon as a weapon, broadcasting a signal to disrupt the Veil's fleet." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "What do you think?" Leah met his eyes, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "I think humanity deserves to be remembered. If this is the end, let it mean something." Ethan nodded, his determination mirroring hers. "Then we fight, and we make sure the galaxy knows who we are." As the Veil fleet drew closer, the council's debate reached a fever pitch. Leah could only hope their decision wouldn't come too late. The control room of Sanctuary 1 was a hive of frantic energy. Technicians barked orders, consoles blinked with warnings, and the ever-present hum of the station's systems felt like a heartbeat growing unsteady. Leaharth sat hunched over the beacon's interface, fingers flying across the controls. The calibrations were nearly complete, but something felt off. She frowned as a small anomaly appeared on her screen. A fluctuation in the beacon's power grid. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. Leia froze, her engineer's instincts screaming. This wasn't a random fault. Someone had tampered with the system. "Leah, how's it looking?" Ethan Voss's voice snapped her back to reality. He stood nearby, scanning a tactical display of the approaching Veil fleet. "Not good," Leia replied, her voice tight. "The beacon's power grid has been compromised. Someone's been messing with the system." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Sabotage?" "Has to be," she said, frustration bubbling in her chest. "This isn't a malfunction. Someone's trying to shut us down before we even get started." Ethan straightened, his gaze sweeping the control room. "Who?" Leah hesitated. The idea of a traitor among them was unthinkable, but the evidence was there. "I don't know, but if I don't fix this now, the beacon won't activate, and all of this will be for nothing." Ethan nodded sharply. "Do what you need to. I'll handle the rest." He turned, barking orders to his squad. "Lock down the station. No one in or out of critical areas without clearance. And find out who's responsible for this." The station's security protocols kicked in, sealing doors and isolating key sections of Sanctuary 1. Tension hung thick in the air as suspicion spread like wildfire. Leah worked furiously, isolating the corrupted circuits and rerouting power to bypass the sabotage. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours, her focus razor-sharp. Sweat dripped from her brow, but she didn't dare pause. Every second counted. Meanwhile, Ethan led a security sweep of the station. His squad moved methodically through the corridors, checking every access point and interrogating anyone who seemed out of place. As they reached the station's maintenance wing, a scuffle broke out. Ethan rushed toward the commotion, finding two technicians grappling on the floor. One was shouting accusations. The other remained eerily silent. "Enough," Ethan barked, yanking them apart. He stared down the silent one, a man named Kovric, whose reputation as a recluse had always been a point of unease among the crew. "Kovric," Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous. "What were you doing in this sector?" Kovric glared but said nothing. A flash of guilt in his eyes gave him away. Ethan gestured to his team. "Take him to the brig. I'll deal with him later." Back in the control room, Leah let out a relieved sigh as the final bypass locked into place. The beacon systems flickered to life, humming with power. "We're back online," she called out, her voice filled with triumph. But the relief was short-lived. The station's comm system crackled, and a voice from the Veil Collective interrupted the moment. "You think your beacon will save you? Foolish humans. Your end is inevitable." Leia's resolve hardened. "We'll see about that." The fight for survival wasn't just external, it was a battle against betrayal, time, and the overwhelming odds stacked against them. But the beacon was operational, and Leah wasn't about to let humanity's light go out without a fight. The first tremors hit Sanctuary 1 like a hammer blow. The Veil Collective had begun their assault, their warships firing precision strikes at the station's outer defenses. The deck beneath Lioharth's feet shuddered, and the lights flickered as the shields absorbed the impact. "Shields at 72%. A voice called out from the command center's tactical console. Ethan Voss paced behind the officers, his face a mask of determination. "Get me firing solutions on those lead cruisers." "Leah, what's the beacon status?" Leah didn't look up from her station. Her fingers flew over the console as she fine-tuned the beacon's core resonance. "Almost there. Another 20 minutes and I can start the activation sequence, but I'll need uninterrupted power." Ethan frowned. "You'll get it. Just hold the line, people." In the station's hangar bay, Ethan's squadron scrambled to their ships. The bay was a cacophony of activity, mechanics shouting and engines roaring as the fighters prepared for launch. Ethan climbed into his own craft, the Valor, an aging but dependable fighter retrofitted for the station's defense. "Commander Voss," came the voice of Lieutenant Marin over the comms. "We're ready when you are." "Copy that," Ethan replied, sealing his cockpit. He took a deep breath, his hands steady on the controls. "All units form up. We're buying Leah the time she needs. Stick together, cover each other, and don't let them through." The hangar doors opened, revealing the chaos outside. The Veil's warships hovered in the void, their weapons raining destruction on the station's defenses. Ethan's squadron shot forward, a swarm of humanity's last pilots against a seemingly unstoppable foe. Leah barely registered the sounds of the battle outside. She was too deep in her work, her mind racing as she monitored the beacon systems. The hum of the core grew louder, filling the room with a low, resonant thrum. "Power fluctuations stabilizing," she muttered to herself. "Signal strength at 70%. 80, 90. The station shook violently, throwing her against the console. Sparks flew as a nearby monitor exploded. "Direct hit on the middeck," someone shouted. "Structural integrity compromised." Leah forced herself back to her feet, gripping the console for support. "Focus," she hissed, her hands flying across the controls again. Ethan's squadron engaged the Veil fighters in a deadly dance of fire and steel. The enemy ships moved with terrifying precision, their pilots seemingly connected by a hive mind. Ethan's voice crackled over the comms. "Break formation. Draw them away from the station." The Valor spun and weaved through the chaos, Ethan firing volleys at the pursuing enemy. Explosions lit up the void as both sides took heavy losses. Despite their efforts, the Veil ships pressed closer to the station. "Ethan, we've got a breach." Leia's voice came over the comms, strained but steady. "Boarding parties are inside." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Understood. I'll send reinforcements. Just keep that beacon going." Inside the station, Veil troops advanced through the corridors, their fluid movements and eerie silence unnerving the defenders. Civilians screamed and scattered as security forces rushed to intercept. Leia's heart pounded as the sound of gunfire echoed through the walls. The beacon systems beeped, signaling readiness. She swallowed her fear and initiated the activation sequence. "Beacon charging," she whispered. "Just a little longer." The station trembled again, this time from within. The fight for time was no longer just a battle. It was survival against the unrelenting storm. The hum of the Universal Resonance Beacon's core grew louder, resonating through the walls of Sanctuary 1 as it drew closer to activation. Leiahart's hands flew across the console, beads of sweat dripping from her brow. Despite the chaos of veil boarding parties and the relentless barrage outside, her focus was razor-sharp. A sudden alert flashed on her screen, a data anomaly in the beacon's subroutines. Leia froze, her fingers hovering over the keys. The anomaly wasn't a malfunction. It was something else. "Leia, status update." Ethan Voss's voice crackled through her comm. She took a steadying breath. "I found something," she replied, her voice low. "There's a subroutine in the beacon's code I didn't program. It looks ancient and powerful." "What do you mean, ancient?" Ethan's tone sharpened. "This isn't just a distress beacon," Leia said, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and fear. "It's capable of broadcasting a signal that could disrupt the Veil Collective's neural hive mind." The comm line went silent for a moment before Ethan replied. "If we use it, will it work?" Leia hesitated. "It could cripple their fleet, but it'll take every ounce of power we have. The station will lose shields, weapons, life support, everything. And there's no guarantee it won't fry the beacon in the process." Ethan cursed under his breath. "What does the council say?" "They're arguing," Leia replied bitterly. "Some think we should surrender instead of risking the station. Others want to use the beacon as a last-ditch weapon. I don't have time to wait for a decision." In the station's corridors, Ethan led a squad of defenders against the veil boarding parties. The alien soldiers were relentless, their movements unnervingly precise. He fired a volley from his rifle, taking down 2 of them, but more filled the gap. "We can't hold this line much longer," shouted Lieutenant Marin from behind a makeshift barricade. Ethan's comm buzzed again. "Ethan," Leia's voice cut through the din. "I need a decision. Now." Ethan ducked behind cover as veil gunfire sparked against the wall beside him. He thought of the people huddled in the station's lower decks, the fighters risking their lives in the void outside, and the history of humanity itself. Surrender wasn't an option. "Do it," he said, his voice steady. "Activate the signal." Leia's fingers trembled as she input the final command. The core's hum grew into a deafening roar as the beacon surged with energy, its panels glowing with an otherworldly light. A warning flashed on her console. "Critical power diversion imminent." "I hope this works," she whispered. The beacon pulsed, releasing a wave of energy that rippled through space. The Veil fleet outside faltered as their formations crumbled. Ships careened into each other, their pilots unable to maintain control. The once coordinated assault dissolved into chaos. Inside the station, Veil soldiers staggered, clutching their heads as their hive-mind connection fractured. The defenders seized the moment, pushing back with renewed vigor. Leia slumped in her chair, exhaustion washing over her. The beacon's glow dimmed as its systems overloaded, leaving the station eerily silent. "Ethan," she said over the comm, her voice weak. "It worked, but the cost was steep. The station's power reserves were nearly depleted, and the Veil fleet, though weakened, was still looming. Humanity's survival now hung by the thinnest of threads." The silence that followed the beacon's activation was as deafening as the chaos that preceded it. Leia Harth leaned back in her chair, her chest heaving. The control room was dim, lit only by the emergency lights and the faint glow of flickering monitors. Her ears rang from the beacon's final pulse, but she forced herself to focus. "Power levels critical. the system intoned in a flat, mechanical voice. Primary systems offline. The station shuddered again, though this time it wasn't from the Veil's assault. Leah glanced at the nearest monitor, showing the scattered remnants of the alien fleet. The beacon's disruptive signal had wreaked havoc on their formations, sending ships spinning out of control. Some had collided with each other, others drifted aimlessly. "Ethan," Leah called into her comm, "the beacon worked, but we're dead in the water. Life support's on backup, and shields are gone. If the Veil regroups, we won't survive another attack." "Understood," Ethan replied, his voice crackling through the comms. "We'll hold the station as long as we can. Get ready to evacuate if it comes to that." Leah frowned. "Evacuate? Where would we even go?" Ethan didn't answer. In the hangar bay, Ethan stood surrounded by his squadron, their faces grim. The remaining Veil soldiers on board had been subdued, but the station was in shambles. Engineers worked frantically to restore power, but the damage was extensive. Lieutenant Marin approached, her helmet tucked under her arm. "The fleet's in disarray, but it won't last. Their ships are already starting to regroup. What's the plan?" Ethan looked out at the void, the broken pieces of Veil ships glittering against the stars. "We hold the line," he said simply. "If we can buy enough time, maybe the beacon signal reached someone, anyone, who can help." Marin's jaw tightened. "And if no one comes?" "Then we fight to the end," Ethan said. Leah's console pinged, pulling her attention from the ominous thought of an evacuation. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, analyzing the data. A strange energy signature was approaching the station, one she didn't recognize. "Commander, I'm picking up something on long-range sensors," she said over the comm. "It's not Veil. I think it might be a response to the beacon." Ethan's voice sharpened. "What kind of response?" "I don't know," Leah admitted. "But whatever it is, it's moving fast." The object emerged from the void like a shard of light cutting through the darkness. It wasn't a fleet, but a single vessel, sleek and massive, its hull glowing with an iridescent sheen. It didn't match any known design in humanity's database. As the mysterious ship approached, the remnants of the Veil fleet hesitated, their scattered formations pulling back as if in recognition or fear. A deep, resonant voice echoed through Sanctuary One's comm system. "People of Earth, we have heard your call. Hold fast, help has arrived." The control room erupted in stunned silence. Leah's breath caught in her throat. She glanced at the beacon, its core now dim but still intact. "Ethan," she whispered, hope flickering for the first time in days. "It worked. Someone heard us." Outside, the Veil Collective's forces hesitated, their ships faltering in the face of this new arrival. Humanity's light, dim as it had been, had pierced the void, and someone had answered. The ship that had emerged from the void was awe-inspiring, a gleaming construct of advanced engineering that made even the Veil warships appear crude in comparison. Its hull shimmered with shifting colors, as though it was alive, and it moved with a grace that defied the cold, mechanical precision of other vessels. Leah Harth stared at the readings on her console, her mind racing to comprehend the raw power emanating from the alien vessel. Energy levels off the charts, weapon signatures unlike anything she'd ever seen. Whoever they were far beyond humanity in technological sophistication. "Ethan, they're hailing us," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "Put them through," Ethan replied, his tone steady despite the tension radiating through the command center. The holographic projector flickered to life, and the image of a being appeared. They were humanoid in form, but radiated an otherworldly presence. Their skin glowed faintly, like molten metal, and their eyes burned with an inner light. "I am Solan, envoy of the Letheri Concord," the figure said, their voice resonating as though it carried the weight of countless stars. "Your signal has reached us, and we have come to aid you in your time of need." Ethan stepped forward, his jaw tight but his posture respectful. "We're grateful for your assistance, Solan." The Veil Collective is regrouping. If they attack again, we won't survive. Solon inclined their head. We are aware of the Veil's aggression. They have been a blight upon the galaxy for centuries. Your beacon's message revealed not only their threat to you, but the courage of your species in the face of annihilation. We will stand with you. The Veil fleet was already beginning to reform, their remaining warships clustering into a new formation. Leah watched the tactical display, her stomach sinking as the enemy prepared to strike. "They're moving fast," she said over the comms. "Whatever you're planning, Solon, we need it now." The Letheri ship responded with precision. Its hull pulsed, and waves of energy rippled outward. Lia's instruments struggled to interpret the phenomenon. It wasn't just energy, it was a form of coordinated disruption. The Veil ships staggered mid-movement, their weapons sputtering as though an unseen force had severed their systems. "Our technology is designed to neutralize hive mind networks," Solon explained, their image still projected in the command center. "The Veil's coordination is their greatest strength and their greatest vulnerability." Ethan, still in the Valor, watched the spectacle unfold. Veil ships collided with one another, their pilots unable to synchronize. Human fighters swooped in, exploiting the confusion to destroy the crippled vessels. "Letheri assistance is a game-changer," Ethan called to his squadron. "Focus fire on anything still operational." The tide of the battle turned rapidly. Where despair had loomed just hours ago, hope now surged. In the control room, Leah felt tears prick her eyes as the Veil fleet began to disintegrate. But amidst the triumph, a question lingered in her mind. "Why did the Letheri come for us?" she murmured. "Why now?" Solon's voice returned, quiet and solemn. "Because you dared to shine a light where others feared the dark, and because your beacon may not just have called us, it may have awakened others, far less benevolent." The victory over the Veil was at hand, but Leia's heart sank. Their signal had been heard, yes, but by whom, and what would come next? The last Veil warship crumbled under a barrage of combined firepower from human and Letheri forces. The battlefield, once a theater of despair, now drifted eerily silent, scattered with the remnants of ships, both alien and human. In the control room of Sanctuary 1, cheers erupted among the crew. Leia Hearth slumped back in her chair, her exhausted face illuminated by the flickering monitors. She'd done it. The beacon had worked. Humanity had survived, thanks to their daring gamble and the unexpected arrival of the Letheri Concord. Ethan Voss's voice came through the comm, steady but tinged with relief. "Leah, we're clear. The Veil fleet is destroyed or in full retreat. Status report on the station." Leah glanced at the energy readouts. "We're running on fumes," she admitted. "Life support's holding, but barely, and the beacon, it's completely fried. One-use wonder, I guess." Ethan chuckled lightly, a sound she hadn't heard in days. "It was enough. You were enough." As the Letheri ship approached Sanctuary 1, its brilliance filled the station's viewports. Leia and Ethan stood in the docking bay, waiting with the remaining council members as the ship docked. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and a hint of unease. When the airlock hissed open, Solon stepped through, flanked by two other luminous figures. The Letheri envoy radiated calm authority, their molten metal appearance more striking up close. Ethan stepped forward. "Solon, on behalf of humanity, thank you. Without your help, we wouldn't have survived." Solon inclined their head. "It was your courage and ingenuity that drew us here. Humanity's will to endure is remarkable." A counselor, her expression wary, stepped forward. "You mentioned that our beacon may have awakened others. Who, or what, are we dealing with?" Solon's glowing eyes dimmed slightly, a rare hint of somberness crossing their features. "The Veil Collective was not the galaxy's only predator. The signal you sent carried far, too far. It may have reached entities that exist beyond this dimension, in the voids between stars." A cold silence fell over the room. Ethan's jaw tightened. You're saying we might have brought something worse down on ourselves? Possibly, Solon admitted. But such risks are necessary for progress. In standing against the Veil, you've proven your species capable of greatness. The Letheri Concord offers you an alliance. Together, we can prepare for what may come. Hours later, Leah found herself staring out of a viewport, gazing at the wreckage of the battlefield. The stars beyond felt closer now, and yet more daunting. Ethan joined her, his presence grounding, thinking about what's next. She nodded. We've always been looking inward, Ethan. Fixing problems on Earth, struggling with each other. Now, we're a part of something so much bigger, and so much more dangerous. Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, but that's what humanity does, right? We adapt, we fight, and we survive. Leah turned to him, a spark of hope in her eyes. Then let's make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. Above Sanctuary 1, the Letheri ship began deploying crystalline satellites, each glowing faintly as they formed a protective perimeter. In the depths of the galaxy, far beyond human comprehension, something stirred. A whisper traveled the void, ancient and hungry, drawn to the beacon's now silent light. Humanity's future was no longer limited to Earth or the Milky Way. They had taken their first step into a wider galaxy, and the path ahead would demand every ounce of their courage and ingenuity.